Why is Final Fantasy XIII so divisive? With the release of Final Fantasy XIII on the Xbox Game Pass, I thought I would treat myself to the 2009 classic Final Fantasy that I played on the PS3 when it first came out. As I booted up the Xbox 360 version on my Series S, I was immediately taken back to the first time I played it on the PS3. On my old CRT TV, the big units as they were, with the opening cutscene kind of juddering along as it intended to play in 720p, not at the 450i I was rocking. Now, I have this game on the PC, and it looks and plays really well there, with some enhancements that the console version was severely lacking, such as easy mode. 13 is a royal fucking nightmare when it comes to difficulty spikes. Eat actual shit and die, Bartantalus. So I suppose the question is yet to be asked properly. Why was Final Fantasy XIII so divisive as a game? In hindsight, I feel like the answer is pretty simple. And no, it's not because it was shit, or linear shit, or shit that's linear. The answer actually lies with Final Fantasy XII, not 13, surprisingly enough. With that in mind, let's first cast our mind back to the previous installment and get a quick reminder of the previously divisive beast. Now, for the sake of this retrospective, I'm going to be looking at Final Fantasy XII and 13, not their respective sequels. For this sake, 13-2, Lightning fucking Returns, and Revenant Wings do not exist. For reference, the footage I'm going to be capturing for this is going to be on the PC release of these games, just for ease of access. I can't be fucked setting up my PlayStation 5 to be recording. Here we go! Final Fantasy XII was released at the end of the PlayStation 2 era of gaming, and was a result of 5 and a bit years of dedicated production under several different directors. It was originally meant to release in Japan a little bit earlier than what it did, but it was delayed until 2006 and released globally in 2007. It told the story of a band of rebels rising up against an evil empire to seek freedom for the people of Ivalice and reclaim the throne for one Ashelia Benagan Dalmasca. You played as Vaan, or Balthier, or Fran, or Barsh, or Penelo, or fucking Ash. You got to choose. Once you reach Leviathan, your party was yours to fuck with, and to customize to your heart's content with the license board, a natural evolution of the sphere grid seen in Final Fantasy X. So if you wanted your Balthier, the real main character, to be an axe-wielding psychopath who wears nothing but light armor and uses exclusively black magic, you can. This freedom meant that you can have all your characters with the same skill set, or you could create your own custom challenges, and form your own job classes. Something that would actually become a reality with the Zodiac Age, well, the International Zodiac Job System, but that's a fucking long title. I don't want to keep saying that, so let's just call it 12Z for simplicity's sake. FF12 was built to play like an MMO, like its predecessor Final Fantasy XI, only without any of that online functionality. It was entirely scrapped here. Because of this mentality, the areas you got to explore were built to be explored. You had this massive fantasy world to explore in a scale that felt even bigger still. Even the central hub city, Rabanastre, is a sprawling hub with 4 areas to explore. And then you've got Lowtown on top of that, well, below that, which is also split into 2 different sections. There's tons of people to chat with, shops to buy shit at, side missions to complete, and it just so many sights to behold. Combat also enjoyed the same principle, playing out in real time using the newly created Gambit system. A system that basically gives you the ability to make the game play itself. Genius! Now, 12Z did a lot to improve upon what 12 had already sold to us. It introduced the job classes, as I mentioned earlier. It introduced New Game Plus and the new trial mode, along with several new super weapons to obtain, cunts though they may be to actually acquire. And a general rebalancing of the game's difficulty, which tended to spike in certain areas because, well, fuck the player, right? So why is this all important? Well, when it comes to sequels, the general approach to a successful sequel is to tackle it like an improv session with a little game of yes and not no, but what does that actually look like though? Well, let's look at another game franchise, for example. Zelda Ocarina of Time and Wind Waker. Ocarina of Time had the gargantuan task of bringing the franchise to the 3D world from the SNES, and had to implement changes to the core mechanics of the game to achieve this. Wind Waker came along and built upon them, scrapping what didn't work and improving in areas that it could. Areas in Ocarina were small. They were cramped and actually just a JPEG hidden behind a green screened environment, which is a little bit of a trick that they used during the PlayStation 1 and Nintendo 64 era. Wind Waker, on the other hand, had large open areas with fully realized 3D worlds with no JPEGs inside. I could go deeper into this, but that's just the example, so let's move on. Final Fantasy XIII is a very different beast. It played a lot of no but, meaning that the series took a few steps back for the sake of trying to win back fans who had abandoned the series following the release of Final Fantasy XI and 12. Mostly 12. No one played 11. Well, they did, but you've never met them. Let's look at the combat to start off with. It was no longer playing out in real time. The game took you away from the field where you explored and dropped you into the battle when you accidentally fell ass backwards into a roaming enemy on the field. It brought back the ATB system with the idea of stacking your moves by using multiple ATBs in a single hit. So instead of getting one hit each time that your gauge filled, you could get 2 to 6 hits off and unleash hell once each of those gauges completed. But there was a catch to that as well, in that the game heavily suggested that you play with the auto battle button instead of manually picking your moves. Why? Well, it was faster and would automatically pick moves that would be most effective in that situation. This is a cool idea, but means you have to wait for your combo. And because there are combos, they also introduced another mechanic, staggering. This was key to beating bosses and those big bastards that blocked your way. Okay, so how do we build upon this? Well, you can also change your job class with the push of a button. Kind of like the dress sphere system in 10.2, which is not surprising that 13 is made by the same team who did the 10 and its sequel. But anyway, this system is called the paradigm shift. Right, so we've got stacked ATBs, staggering, and paradigms. But how do they all fit together to make combat enjoyable? Well, each fight plays out like a puzzle. And you have to figure out that puzzle through trial and error. This is where that auto battle button comes in handy. But it can't change your paradigms for you, so you still need to figure out what job classes you're going to need to use to suit each fight individually. This is a great idea until you have an onslaught of entirely different enemies that require different strategies in back-to-back battles. So you can't even mindlessly grind in this game. Now, let's get to the biggest no but. The one that was memed into oblivion by the likes of JonTron and Yahtzee. The corridor effect. Whereas 12 had these large sprawling areas almost from the get-go, Rex, eat your heart out. 13 has you wait until chapter 11 until you reach the Arclight, the Kilty, acrylic, the step. The step is open and vast, kind of like the Calmlands in FF10. Once you're here, you've basically unlocked all your Eidolons. You can now fully choose your team, and the game really opens up. In chapter 11 of 13. Yeah, that's not looking great. So for 70% of this game, you were traveling down very samey looking corridors that look great for the first 3 minutes, but 1 hour later, you're more than a little bit tired of the scenery. On the topic of story, which I've been putting off because, well, Final Fantasy XIII story is, well, it's shit. Most of the juicy content of the actual story is hidden away in the data logs, which get updated every 3 seconds. It's like an update from fucking Fee in Skyward Sword. Yes, Fee, I know I need to find Zelda. You don't need to tell me the odds of finding her. Never tell me the odds. So you play as Lightning, who is a clone of a clone of a clone of a clone of Cloud from Final Fantasy VII, only with pink hair and boobs. She has the personality of a rake, and the fighting prowess of a swan wielding said rake. She's an absolute killing machine. She starts the story off on a train with Saz, the real MVP of this entire game. He got all the personality points on his character sheet. It's ridiculous. By the end of the cutscene, she has successfully freed all of the passengers and killed them all simultaneously. I'm not even kidding. Watch this shit.
You serious?
Be quiet.
Best of luck. She did it! Hands high! Freeze! You alright? I'm not a Lassie. So far, so good. They all want to fight.
Good for them. Give me that.
What the...
Only her and Saz survive because of plot armor. You get dropped into a boss battle immediately and quickly discover the inconsequential nature of combat in Chapter 1. No experience, you're healed automatically after every battle, and you get all the items you need to survive the next battle. Seriously, Chapter 1's combat is severely pointless, like a certain sequel in this series that we're not going to be talking about because it doesn't exist in this argument. By chapter's end, you and your friends, I guess, get tattooed by the first true boss of the game, Anima, and are tasked with destroying Cocoon with something called Ragnarok, which never gets explained until the fucking final battle. Okay, so we've got story done, we've got the actual gameplay done. What about character progression? 12 had the license board, 13 has the Crystarium. This thing is a fucking nightmare. So, your Lego people get CP for killing things in battle, starting from Chapter 2 at least, which can be spent on the jobs that they have unlocked for that time. For Lightning, this means that she starts with her Commando, the Warrior, Ravager, Black Mage, at the start of Chapter 2. And the CP she earns can be used to improve them individually. But it's the slowest fucking thing to watch progress. You need to watch as the light bar fucking gets brighter between each fucking node, like you're leveling shit up in God of War 1, just without that pissing sound effect, which is replaced by this harmonious drone. It's just awful. Time consuming and awful. Speedruns of this game are an art form, as you get to watch them skillfully dodge combat and leveling up. Oh, and I forgot to mention my biggest gripe that I have with Final Fantasy XIII's combat. If your controlled character dies, it's game over. Why? Who the fuck knows? This idea made sense in Kingdom Hearts. If Sora dies, then the power of the Keyblade dies with him. Goofy and Donald will be left to their own devices, and if nature has shown us anything, they'll be flayed and fucked before the night of the first day. If Lightning dies, we cheer. And the other Lassie apparently aren't smart enough to use a Phoenix down, like the Aerith situation. But you have to waste one on their stupid asses? If Hope dies, we cheer even louder. I seriously hate that kid. He needs to fucking die in a hole. If it sounds like I'm beating the ever-loving shit out of Final Fantasy XIII, it's because I am. 13 has a lot of great ideas that are poorly executed. So let's do a recap. Final Fantasy XII had an open world with fully customizable, mostly likable characters, and an interesting story inspired by the likes of Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. 13, on the other hand, had narrow corridors and cardboard cutouts of characters set in a nonsensical world and plot. So why is 13 so divisive? Because it undid all of the work that the previous game in the series put into progressing the series. It'd be like if Square announced that Final Fantasy VII Remake Episode 2 is going to be turn-based with 2D sprite art using the Unity engine, like the Final Fantasy pixel remasters of Final Fantasy 1 to 6 did. So did anything get the yes and treatment? No, not really. If 11 and 12 didn't exist, then yes, because 13 does a lot of what 10 did nearly a decade prior. 10 had a linear narrative. It also had a change to the combat system and a plot that was a bit meh for the time, but 10 was yes-ending the PS1 era of games. The new combat system went back to turn-based, but employed the same strategies that you had with the ATB system, as that there was consequences for your actions. Your skills came from a skill chain in the form of the sphere grid, which was an evolution of the materia, the junction, and the equipment skills growth systems before it. The sphere grid also brought customization with it. Crystarium does not. The linearity of 10 is also not as noticeable as the fixed camera, and frequently changing locales meant that the world never got stale. The characters were fun and bombastic, except for Titus doing that laugh. That haunts me. 13's cast of cardboard is just that. Cardboard. Lightning is a brooding ex-soldier with fancy tricks that make her make things deader quicker. Snow is a jock who punches things very hard. He also has a hard-on for Sarah, which I can hardly blame him. Vanille is a girl. She's an Aussie. Her tattoo is on her upper thigh, because of course it is. I like Vanille. She gets a pass. Fang is a Kiwi. She gets a pass because she isn't seen in the story enough to annoy me. Hope is a little annoying fuck of a fuckstain. He spends most of this game wanting to kill Snow, and when he finally gets the opportunity to do so, he bitches out and just decides to hang out with this gang of adults. He needs to die in a fire with the jumping Bowser because he's a freak. Saz is MVP. He has a chocobo in his fro and provides meta commentary on the game. He also has one of the darkest moments in the entire Final Fantasy franchise where he attempts to shoot himself in the fucking head. My boy needs all the help he can get. He gets a pass, and that's about it. So that's 3 acceptable characters out of a total of 6. How does 12 stack up? Well, 12's most annoying character is Vaan. The rest of the crew is fine. Balthier, voiced by Gideon Emery, is the leading man, and has amazing support from his lovely Vieira colleague, Fran. 5 out of 6 acceptable characters. So what are these great ideas that 13 presents? Well, the job classes changing on the fly is brilliant, something that was adopted by Final Fantasy XIV because it, yes, ended quite well. Having your characters team up to lay into a beast of a beastie with combos to break their defenses, that's fantastic. That's straight out of Chrono Trigger. Enemies appearing in the living world, excellent. It removes the randomness of the encounters, meaning you can specifically target specific monsters if you're trying to hunt for specific items. That's smart. Eidolons need to be fought individually as a test of one's character. Great chances to showcase powerful character moments. Sadly, this is only reserved for Saz. That's about it. 13 is a mess of missed opportunities. It's a metric fuck ton of no butting. The idea of backpedaling for the sake of trying to reinvigorate fans who had moved on, without really servicing those who stuck around, is massively stupid. And has been repeated countless times across all forms of medium. Looking at you, Riser, fuck off. If Square decides to remaster the 13 trilogy, I hope they take the time to address some of the seriously core systematic issues within the game. The story is a train wreck, but it's at least entertaining enough to be serviceable. Except Bartandless. Fuck you, Bartandless, and all that you hope to achieve, you orphan wannabe fuck!